Mr. Minister, how does it feel to be in the immediate neighborhood of a large-scale war conflict, which is something unthinkable for Europe in 21st century?
It's mixed bag of emotions, I can tell you. First of all, it looks like we've been preparing for that. We were one of those countries who've been always telling that Russia is an aggressive country since 2008 when they first attacked Georgia. Then 2014 they attacked Ukraine for the first time. So I can tell you probably that we should not be very much surprised of what we're seeing. But on the other hand, obviously living so close to where the war is taking place, some of the equipment that Russia brought to Belarus is just miles away from, just a few miles away from Lithuanian border. So it definitely changes the perception of where we are and how potentially dangerous the situation is and the environment is where we are living. Therefore, this is one of the reasons why we are approaching our NATO allies and asking for additional reinforcements for the Baltic region, especially for Lithuania, since we have not just Belarus on one side, but also Kaliningrad on the other side.
Are there any efforts, and to what extent, for Russian political influence in Lithuania?
Well, to be honest, I can tell you that we've seen the attempts, really active attempts to influence Lithuanian politics decades ago. Probably, I would say that the first attempts happened before we joined the EU. There were politicians, parties who would actively try to influence our direction. But I think it was early discovery of the fact, recognition that we might be influenced, or somebody from Russia might try to influence us. And it helped the main political actors and the main political parties in Lithuania to find a consensus about our strategic goals, be it NATO, be it EU, and all the other main achievements that we've already achieved. It was done by the cohesion of the political class.
You insist that existing NATO forward presence in the European eastern flank is no longer sufficient, and you insist on not an inch strategy that has to be a, let's say, new posture of the alliance. In this context, what do you expect from the NATO summit, upcoming NATO summit in Madrid?
Well, that's an excellent question. Not an inch strategy was proposed by the President of the United States in Warsaw, with his commitment that every inch would be defended. And we think that it's an excellent political statement, the one that we would like to see becoming a NATO's posture in the eastern flank. How can it be practically achieved? I think that first of all we need a strategic decision that the Baltic countries will be defended not just by themselves, but also by the allies from the first moment if the attack would start. And on the practical terms, more troops are needed. With a permanent presence, I would say that I would argue that Baltic states and Lithuania especially is where they need to be placed due to our intrinsic geographic vulnerabilities, be it the territory squeezed in between Kaliningrad and Belarus. Also the additional equipment, air defense, maritime defense. This is the main things that would be used in case the attack would happen.
During your stay in Skopje here, you give an optimistic statement that is possible to make a progress in the following 2 months following the blocked EU integration. But fewer and fewer Macedonians here believe in that because, let's say, as a consequence of this lost faith, European Union is losing a lot of credibility rapidly, I would say, in North Macedonia. Are there any discussions in Brussels about these tendencies?
Absolutely. Probably this is one of the reasons why I'm here today. It's also because the loss of credibility, European credibility, is it hurts not just the people who are living in North Macedonia, but also to those who are living in Lithuania, or those who are now fighting the war in Ukraine. That means that it's a general agenda, and we have to make sure that we are not losing credibility in those countries where we as a European Union, have given promises. Yes, I'm optimistic because there is a lot of momentum for that. Ukraine's request for candidate status that was issued, that was put on the table a few months ago, not hinders the Macedonian path forward, but I think that gives momentum, gives a boost for that. And that gives me this optimism. But obviously we have to work very hard to build the consensus around the 27, that this is a crucial point for European Union. It's not just about the North Macedonia. It's more about the European Union and about our stance. There are talks, as you've mentioned, and one of those talks will be happening quite soon. In a few weeks, we will have a regular Foreign Affairs Council in Brussels, but one of the major topics that we will be discussing is the status of candidate perspective for countries of the Western Balkans. And the Minister of North Macedonia will be attending there, and I'm convinced that the arguments will be laid out, and I'm hoping that some of the movement, the progress could be achieved there. But let's give it some time and we'll see.
The obstacle that is blocking your integration is not fulfilling the criteria in, let's say, independence of the judiciary, fight against crime, corruption, but let's say for someone who wants to use its Macedonian language, and it has to be named as a Macedonian language. Is it European to call this a bilateral issue? And how do you find the solution for this kind of, let's say, emotional issue?
Well, to be honest, those countries who are finding themselves in what is usually called a geopolitical fault line, usually have a difficult history. And difficult history with their neighbors as well. And this is true to North Macedonia, and this is true to Lithuania. We had a very long and very different history with our big neighbor, Poland. And as you can imagine, we had, and to be honest, we still have our issues that are being resolved even as we speak. Just a few months back, we voted a law that concerns the Polish minority in Lithuania that we've been discussing with Poland for almost 30 years. But the thing is that it never blocked our path neither to EU nor to NATO. Because we've always seen, Vilnius and Warsaw, we've seen that the strategic issues are important to both capitals. And we cannot let issues like minorities, language, and cultural issues of the past, that they would stop us.
But here we have an opposite.
Yes, and
opposite experience.
Yes,
we have
exactly. And I would
blocking because of these sensitive issues.
And therefore, I would like to see more of this dynamics that drove Lithuanian and Polish relationship happening here. And I think it's a very good example. That. And I've been joking, some issues, took us 30 years to resolve. Some of them maybe will take, 20 years more. It's hard to tell. The governments change in Warsaw and in Vilnius, but they will be solved. Give it 200 years, we'll solve everything. So the same should be applied with Bulgaria and North Macedonia. I mean, it's possible to solve it, but it cannot stop, a strategic achievement. That would be EU's membership in EU.
So you're saying that the strategic interests of EU cannot be overcome by a national interest by some member state?
That is truly my opinion. And I understand that there are more and more voices within the EU who are coming out and speaking about this more loudly, because as I mentioned in your previous question, that it's not just about North Macedonia, it's about the EU. And can we actually say that we still have an open door policy when we cannot deliver on our promise to maintain it? So what good then our promises to other countries in Western Balkans or in Eastern Partnership countries where they just recently applied for membership candidate status?
If we say that there is a lack of European Union perspective for the Western Balkans now, and we know that if there is a lack of perspective, it leaves a lot of empty space that can be used by third parties, let's say like China and Russia. What can we do then?
Well, absolutely. I mean, as with everything else, nature abhors vacuum. And in geopolitics, that applies as well. That means that if Europe is not active geopolitically, politically, economically, trade-wise, then somebody else will. And we're seeing China's very, I would even say, aggressive moves in certain regions and in Western Balkans as well, with certain promises that add not just provide not just economic value but also political weight that the countries have to bear for long years to come. So I think that this has to be also we cannot lose the track of that. And when the current Commission started working, and Ursula von der Leyen promised a geopolitical union, a geopolitical commission, and we've been constantly asking, especially from Lithuania, so when we'll finally see geopolitical commission, geopolitical European Union coming into the light. And I think that the time is now. The events in Ukraine, Russia's war, China's posture, many things globally provide an opportunity, but also the reason for the geopolitical union. And where it can play out, well, I think that in Western Balkans is an excellent place to really show that we're serious about our commitments.
Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.